Zaros again. So I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction about us, real brief, and turn it over to Mar right away because I know you want to hear what he has to say. So one of the first stories I heard when I started work at Nonviolent Peaceforce was from Mindanao, and I want to share that story with you today. I did some peace building work in the region before and was really drawn to NP's work because of this story in particular. So the story I heard was of one of NP's teams who had the relationship and knowledge to keep families safe from harm during a local outbreak of violence. So this particular NP team, one of many that we have in Mindanao, one day spotted about 100 armed men moving towards a nearby village. When they heard the next day that tensions were rising, they immediately got in their trucks and headed there. Our staff have deep relationships in the community, so they knew there was an ongoing dispute between two local armed groups. And when they got to the village and went towards the sound of gunfire, it was worse than they imagined. They found about 30 vehicles filled with children and families on board, caught in the middle of the road and unable to pass through. The families had been trying to leave the village before fighting broke out, but hadn't made it in time. And our team has built trust with these local groups, these local armed groups. So the groups knew who NP was and why we had arrived. And we were able to go talk to their leaders and ask them to have a pause, put their arms down, stop the gunfight so that we could get these families out. And we were able to accompany the families to safety that day. And then later, our NP team created a neutral space for the armed groups to discuss their dispute and come to an agreement without guns this time. So this is what we do at Nonviolent Peaceforce. We believe conflict is inevitable, but violence is not. And I know some of you know about us, but just to give a few more sentences for those of you who might be new to Nonviolent Peaceforce. So NP reimagines safety and the protection of people in areas most impacted by conflict. We work alongside communities to interrupt and prevent violence, and we've protected tens of thousands of people around the world since our launch in 2002. Through direct protection, advocacy, relationship building, and trainings in person and online, NP expands access to life-saving strategies and really creates a violence-free tomorrow. So we have programs in the Philippines, but also in Iraq, Myanmar, South Sudan, Thailand, the United States, and we're in the process of starting up in Ukraine. So I'm going to turn it over to Mar now. I'm so excited that he's here with us tonight. He's been with NP since 2007, so just has a wealth of knowledge to share with you, and he's a native of Cotabato City. So I'll turn it over to Mar.
Thank you very much, Anna, for the introduction. So I was assigned, tasked to share with you the updates in Mindanao. I believe most of you have heard already that one of the conflict areas in the Philippines is in Mindanao, but we're particular in Mindanao. So later on, we will also see where are the conflicts, where are the areas of these armed groups. So I'll start sharing my screen now. Let me know if you can see this already. Can you see this?
It looks good, Mar. Looks good.
Thank you. So the flow of my presentation would be just very brief. I will keep this within 30 minutes time so that we can have more time for the question and answer later. So just a brief one-slider about NP in the Philippines. The update on the peace process where Nonviolent Peaceforce is working in Mindanao, and what are the works of the UCP, the Unarmed Civilian Protection that NP is doing, and what is the normalization process. Okay, so this will be the flow of my presentation. So first, NP in the Philippines. So we started in 2007 with a group of around 5 or 6 staff, including 5 international staff. And this is through the invitation of various civil society organizations. So during this period, the tension between the government of the Philippines and the MILF is really high, and the civil society organization deemed the importance of the work of NP in the Philippines. So during this time as well, in 2009, Nonviolent Peaceforce became a member of the international monitoring team under its civilian protection component. So the CPC is part of the ceasefire mechanism through the agreement of the government of the Philippines and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front to monitor the compliance and non-compliance of both parties in protecting civilians. So we monitor case displacements of civilians. We refer them to the service providers. We monitor burning of houses, burning of mosques, burning of civilian properties or damage to civilian properties, because this was part of the agreement of the ceasefire agreement between both parties. So in 2009 and until 2018, we had a partnership with UN agencies working on the monitoring and reporting grave child rights violation and work on gender-based violence as well. And one of the work of NP during this time is the UN MILF action plan, wherein the disengagement process of the minors within the ranks of MILF, because they were blacklisted by the UN because of recruiting children, ages below 18 years old. And in 2018, we expanded a little bit in the eastern part of Mindanao. It is a different context, different peace process between the government of the Philippines. And in 2020, we support the Bangsamoro normalization, which is part of the ongoing peace implementation between the government of the Philippines and the MILF. So technically, Nonviolent Peaceforce came into the Philippines in the context, the premise of the peace process between the government and the MILF, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. So this is our brief presentation only on where are we located in Mindanao. So we call this in the middle, we call that as the mainland, and on the southern part, southwestern part is the island provinces. This is more where you have conflicts in the main island, but at the same time, these hard to reach areas in the island provinces also have their own conflicts, their own context. And at the same time, they were the ones who are not really receiving, receiving services from the government, because the region is centered in the mainland and not really in the southern western part. So just basic updates on the peace process of the GPH and MILF. In 2012, there was a framework agreement signed. This is to pave a new Bangsamoro government to replace the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. So this arm, or what we call the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, is one of the regions in the Philippines. So this was through the creation of the MNLF peace agreement before. So MILF is a faction of the MNLF before, the Moro National Liberation Front, and they have their own peace negotiation. So to replace the arm, they had the framework agreement on the Bangsamoro as part of the process. In 2014, both government and the MILF signed the CAB, or the Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, and there was a passage of law in 2018. So this Bangsamoro Organic Law will provide what are the process, the annexes, and in terms of co-sharing wealth, what would be the role of the MILF in the new government. And you have the Bangsamoro Transition Authority to deal with those legalities, to deal with those technical matters of the agreement. And in between this 2012 to 2019, there were annexes that were signed as well. The annexes on normalization, co-sharing, wealth, and waters. So I have not included it here already, but just to share with you how the peace process of the MILF, went through. And supposedly the transition would only be until 2022. That was in the agreement, but the MLF requested for the postponement of the BARM election from 2022 and extend it until 2025. This means that there will be no election this coming 2022, and it will only be done in 2025. Okay. So, as mentioned earlier, Nonviolent Peaceforce is working with this context between the government of the Philippines and the MLF. But there are other conflicts as well, type of conflicts as well that we are looking into, particularly in Mindanao. So we have Rido or clan feud. So although this is outside the MILF and government conflict, but this also affects civilians. No, even a short firefight, let's say a 30 minutes firefight, this could displace number of families. So you have a picture on your right. It's the actual displacement, and you have a picture on your left, which is a covenant signing. This is a covenant signing between two clans, between two families, facilitated by the local government, the military, and the regional provincial government as well. So they sign an agreement that from now on there will be no more retaliation between two parties. But sometimes this covenant signing will only last for a year, 2 years, and then they go back again to that cycle. Okay. Another one is the extremist group. What happened in Marawi in 2007, where NP is there to provide support, no, for the civilians, which later I will share as well on what were the interventions, no, some interventions of the Nonviolent Peaceforce in Marawi. So you have this another conflict as well, no, when there is this kind of attacks. Recently here in Mindanao, there in just 2 months, just last month, there were already number of bombing of buses. So there were already 2 recorded bombing of public bus, no. So they put the explosive at the back of the bus, and then when it traveled, then it exploded. So there were already 2 cases on that one. So just to give more information about the presence of this armed group, so I tried to share with you very briefly this flag, no. So this flag represents the Moro National Liberation Front. It is they're founded in 1968. And they signed major agreements in 1976, the Tripoli, 1986 in Jeddah, and the final peace agreement, which was in 1996. So, excuse me, in 1996, it was the creation of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. But now, because of the agreement of the government and the MLF, they changed it into Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Now, this is where we are located as well. You've seen our offices. This covers our area of responsibility. Now, next you have another red one, which is the CPP NPA, which is concentrated more on the eastern part of Mindanao. So they are there in the left side part. So it's also the 1968, no? I think before the martial law, because of the different incidents such as massacres among the Bangsamoro people that were recorded together with the MNLF. So you have the MILF. So you can see MILF flag. Most of them are where MNLF is as well, because these are brothers, these are relatives. So the MILF are a faction of an MNLF group that had created a discussion and peace process with the government of the Philippines as well. Okay, so now you see the black flags. They are mostly concentrated in the island provinces of Mindanao, mostly founded in 1990. Then you have another black flag in the main island. So these are the breakaway group again from the MILF. So MNLF and then MILF, then you have the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. So they are mostly concentrated in the mainland. Yeah. So when you the Philippines flag is where the military, the main division of the military are located in Mindanao. So Nonviolent Peaceforce work on the BARM areas, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, in the context of the Bangsamoro, but we're trying to go into the eastern part with one of our projects, but it's still very new and young in the context of the eastern part process, no? The eastern part peace process between the CPP NPA and the government of the Philippines. So the unarmed civilian protection work of Nonviolent Peaceforce, usually it's more on the situational reports, regular monitoring, capacity building for the communities to better protect themselves. So we provide safe space for them to discuss their concerns, and they will be the one to resolve their own conflict with the support of the different stakeholders, not only Nonviolent Peaceforce. So they are deployed. The facilitators, the trainers are deployed in the ground, where civilians live in far-flung barangays, in the BARM, and outside of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. And as shared earlier, we are member of the civilian protection component under the international monitoring team, who is the third party between the government and the MILF in terms of monitoring their compliance and non-compliance to the ceasefire agreement. So NP is the only international organization of the 4 organizations part of the civilian protection component. In Marawi City, the siege happened in 2017, and the update right now, majority of the evacuees are still in the transitory site, no? And there's an already ongoing construction of mosque, schools, village hall, and sports complex. So these have been ongoing right now, and there are relief services and cash assistance made, no, after the siege to support the people of Marawi who evacuated. And we already have I think the Marawi compensation bill was passed already. This will provide compensation to the families of the Marawi residents, no, who were affected by the siege in 2017. So some of the responses of Nonviolent Peaceforce is that just 3 days after the siege, when it started, Nonviolent Peaceforce was the only international organization who was allowed to go to the provincial hall in Marawi City to monitor and assess and provide actually support on those that have evacuated already. So some of the responses includes we link the case management, in the city social welfare department of Marawi to support the hostage survivors. So why NP? Of course, there are several actors. There were several stakeholders in the area as well. But one of the key point of Nonviolent Peaceforce is that it is based near Marawi City. It has an office there, and the relationship and the acceptance of these stakeholders and agencies, no, to the work of NP is good. So they trust the work of NP. They trust how NP conduct its field activities and work on the ground. And because of our principle as well of non-partisan and primacy of the local actors, so you can see the importance of this when we work on the ground. Second is we also provide support for the family tracing and reunification. So an agency requested NP to provide support in terms of bringing back those children to their families after the siege. Then next is the protective accompaniment during evacuation and transfer. For example, in Marawi City, when the team is going from Marawi to the nearby municipality or to the nearby city, and they saw this group of evacuees, from Marawi as well. So we try to provide support to them, because if they go to the other route, it will take them 1 or 2 days. But if we go this way with NP, because at that time the checkpoints are very critical to those people moving, anticipating that there are some members of the perpetrators, also going out of Marawi City. So they're very critical on that. And as Nonviolent Peaceforce, we provided accompaniment and protective presence as well. And in Watu Balindong, when there was an ambush that happened, the son of the MILF official and one of the MILF's base commander was ambushed, and it had sparked a firefight, for at least around 30 minutes to 1 hour, and they continued. But because of the peace process mechanism and because of the presence of Nonviolent Peaceforce in the area, NP was requested to accompany the MILF soldier village to move out and go back to their camp to avoid the firefight. So it was tasked to NP because of the support and to avoid further escalation of the conflict. So now that is for the some work of NP in and the response of NP in violent incidents. Now we proceed to the normalization process of the Bangsamoro. So when the Bangsamoro Organic Law was signed, part of the process there, part of the agreement is the normalization process. So it's more on transition of the MILF combatants into a civilian life, a civilian environment. But you have a very comprehensive track for this one, and you have different mechanisms. So you have the security mechanism, you have the socio-economic, you have the confidence building measures, and transitional justice. So ideally, this should be done by 2022, but they extended until 2025 because it was not realistic for us to accomplish this, especially with the different process and bureaucracy. So Nonviolent Peaceforce signed terms of reference under the joint normalization mechanism, which is part of the security. And what are the other support to the normalization includes the values transformation among decommissioned combatants. So we train them on values transformation, about faith, about religion. To those who were selected decommissioned combatants. Of course, the plan is to have around 4 phases of decommissioning. I think the update now is they already finished they're on the third phase is finished already, and they're proceeding to the fourth. And further, we provide support in partnership with our local NGO in facilitating and promoting psychosocial, no, among the decommissioned combatants and their families. And one of the mechanism as well in the field is the creation of the Joint Peace and Security Team. So you have, if I can share it to you, under the security, you can see JPST there, Joint Peace and Security Team. So they are the one in charge in monitoring and handling conflicts, no? When it arises in the conflict affected areas where the presence of MILF and the military groups are there. So eventually they will transition as well later into like a police force. So that is we train them on unarmed civilian protection. At the same time, we provide space for them for the refresher course, no? So for them to, because they are recently trained, so it's not really just a one-time training, but you always have to coach and mentor them. So they have that opportunity during this training as well to refresh about their to refresh some topics about their trainings earlier. And we capacitate stakeholders under the normalization program on conflict resolution, redo mapping, and monitoring. If you can see, part the missing content here is the monitoring and evaluation. Of course, you have the third party to monitor, review, and assess the implementation of all signed agreements, but internally, they wish to have a monitoring and evaluation, establish indicators, how they say that these are already achieved in terms of their targets, no? What are the indicators, or what are the lacking process that needs to be conducted as well for this. So these are a brief presentation about how the work of NP and where NP is located in the process, or in the peace process of the Bangsamoro government, the MILF, and the government of the Philippines. For now, I'm ending my presentation, and good morning. If you have questions, we can actually discuss. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks.
you.
I'm going to
Thank you,
moderate the
Mar.
question answer, and if it'd be best if you could raise your hand, but if you could speak up too, I guess that works also. But I have lots of questions, and but I'm going to hold mine until other people. So who is the first question?
In the chat, Horon has a question.
One
Yes.
of your questions is about the recording, and I'll post it and we'll send it out to PSGM. It'll be on YouTube.
Yes,
Huron said, what is the role of the Philippine government in legitimizing the work of NP in the conflict in southern Mindanao? So what's your relationship to the government?
Yes, the Philippine government has this office, no? They call it Office of the Presidential Advisor. Earlier, it was called Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process. Now they call it Office of the Presidential Advisor on Peace, Reunification, and Unity. It's the same office. So this is where the peace negotiation, this is where the Philippine government lodged its engagement on the peace negotiation with MILF through this office. And we engage with this office, and they recognize us as a relevant organization on to support and provide accompaniment to the peace process. Earlier in 2007, we focused on the civilian protection component. I think there was a question as well here, what does CPC means? It is civilian protection component as part of the ceasefire mechanism between the government and the MILF. So we were tasked to be part of that mechanism to monitor the compliance and non-compliance of both parties in protecting civilians, whether during the firefight, they burn houses, they attack civilians, they damage properties. So because there was the ceasefire agreement, so they have someone to monitor on that one. And now, because of our terms of reference signed under the Joint Normalization Commission, it's somehow legitimizing the work of NP, to provide support, to give its expertise on working in the civilian protection of the community to better protect themselves. I hope I answered your question, po.
It says, what is MP's funding sources? Another question.
I think Anna would be able to answer that.
Maybe Anna.
Yeah, so our different country programs are funded by different government agencies, bilateral and multilateral organizations. I think MUAMAR Philippines program is funded a lot through the European Union. Is that right?
Yes, I think EU has been our institutional donor in our work for the civilian protection component. And actually now when we move into the normalization process, it's still the EU is the largest chunk of the fund. And we also have other support, but EU is the largest.
Yeah, and then part of our funding is from folks like you. All of our country programs, aren't completely fully funded. So we close that gap, which is really essential with, gifts from folks around the world, mostly in the United States and Minnesota in particular. I'm in Minnesota, but around the world too. So
I have a question, Mark. I know that over the years, you've been shown on the timeline, there's development of peace teams that between the MILF and the government forces, and that meet periodically and also meet when there's some urgency. I'd like you to comment a little bit on how that works. And does that involve the National Police, the PNPs also? We saw a big failure of communication with the PNP back at the Mama Sapano thing years ago. Is the PNP part of this whole peace process in terms of communicating with the MILF and with NP?
Yes. In terms of the communication, you have the Peace Implementing Panel headed by the MILF Central Committee. You have the political, for the GPH as well. Now on the ground as well, on the ground area, you have the BIAF or the Bangsamoro Islamic Armed Forces. These are the military wing of the MILF, and you have the Armed Forces of the Philippines as part of the military wing of the Philippines. Now, usually in terms of security, the AFP is the one doing this kind of work in securing the lands. But for the police, it's more on the law enforcement. As you mentioned earlier, Paul, like the one in the Mama Sapano, it is more of an arrest kind of thing. No, they want to arrest a person. They want to serve a one. They want to arrest a person. Now, where is the gap in that one? So ideally, the AFP and the PNP should have that discussion as well, that there is a ceasefire agreement. When you say ceasefire agreement, there are some places that is area of the MILF that when you enter to that particular area, you have to coordinate with the ceasefire mechanism. Or we call it here as the CCCH, the Coordinating Committee on the Cessation of Hostilities. So if military wants to pass through that area of MILF, they have to coordinate so that MILF will not be alarmed and not start shooting at them. If they know that it is coordinated, okay, they will lay low and then they let the military pass through. Now, in absence of this coordination and communication, for example, if the PNP said, we do not want to coordinate this to the CCCH or to the mechanism, because the perpetrator or the one who is our target may be alarmed and he will go already, and the purpose of that entrapment operations will not be successful. So, but they have to respect that. They have to respect that because there's an agreement. Now, mostly it's the military pole and not really of the PNP. For PNP, it's more on the law enforcement, drugs related within the area, criminalities within the area.
Okay, there's another question here from Huron and Leticia. They wanted to know a little bit more about the leadership of the Bangsamoro. Who basically, who's the government negotiating with? What's the structure like? Do they don't have elected leaders yet? They have are they veterans of the armed struggle, or how do they get promoted up into the upper level of the MILF? And
Leadership structure of
they just want to know the leadership structure.
That was okay.
So if they don't have elections,
okay, so
what is the structure of their leadership? Are they traditional leaders of some sort?
Now in yes, excuse me. There are many Bangsamoro people who are not part of the MILF, but they are
you're breaking up. Maybe you should turn off your video so we can get your audio.
They have expertise. Now, in the
Mar, I think you're going to have to turn your video off. Okay, go ahead.
Let me know. Is this clear again?
Yeah, it's clear now.
Now for the structure, in the Bangsamoro Organic Law that was recently passed, it's the creation of the BARM government. You have 80 members of the parliament. 41 of the 80 will be recommended by the MILF. So since this is the MILF, 41 will be recommended by them, 39 will be recommended by the national government. The appointing authority is still the president of the Philippines. So if it's MILF, they recommended that the chairman of the MILF group will be the interim chief minister. Okay, and the rest of the 41 will be recommended by the MILF leadership. So let's say, for example, I recommend Paul for this to be a member of the for this ministry. I recommended Meg for this. So they will recommend that to the president. The president will just to approve and appoint that what you've recommended is fine from my end. Now the other 39 will be recommended by the government side. So once they recommend it, you will be one of members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. You will be a member of a parliament, thing like that. Now that is for that particular transition. So supposedly in 2022, they will have another election. They will have already the election, but they said that it's not realistic. The transition is still very new, very young, so we need to postpone it until 2025. So in terms of the peace implementation in the peace process, the one who sits in the MILF side are members of the MILF leadership in the central committee. So you have you have the focal in the peace implementing panel for MILF. You have peace implementing panel for the government. So these are the ones who will recommend the membership of the parliament. In the BOL, 41 for the MILF and 39 for the national government.
Lita Malexi says she has a question.
Thank you, Paul. Well, first of all, Mar and Anna's still here, right? Thank you for your informative and enlightening presentation. And more importantly, thank you for your efforts and fearlessness in joining the movement for peace. It is not an easy undertaking. There's harm involved in it. So you're being gutsy, and I admire you for doing what you're doing. Um, I can only speak on behalf of myself, and will assume that this NP endeavor is not new to my PSGM colleagues, but it is new to me. And so I'd like to ask two questions. First, what kind and how much involvement does the state of Minnesota play or has played in the efforts and activities of NP? And the other question is probably was already answered by Anna. And my question was, how can the Filipino community organizations in the state of Minnesota help in NP's movement and peacekeeping and protecting civilians in the Philippines? They are there and we are here.
Mar, is it okay if I take it away on that one?
Sure, Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, Lita, thank you so much for these questions. These are so great. There hasn't been involvement from the state of Minnesota formally as a governmental institution in the work of Nonviolent Peaceforce, but we were co-founded by a group of people, and our two main co-founders were David Hartso and Mel Duncan, and Mel Duncan is from Minnesota. So there's a large contingent and sort of groundswell of support here in Minnesota. So in that way, it's very much community. The organization is very much community supported by people here in the state. And then to your latter question, we've had lots of internal conversations around just thinking about what a big Filipino diaspora there is in the United States, and here in the Twin Cities, if there are ways where folks might want to get involved. So, my answer to that question would be, if you think, we love sort of coming to talk to groups like this. So if you think that there are other groups who might, there's the cultural, I know there's the cultural society, in town too. So if there are other groups that you think it would make sense, it would be interested in this work, we'd be more than happy to come and chat with them. And if there ever, if there are groups you're involved in who are doing sort of charity drives or things like that, where folks might want to, organize financial support and gifts, we would certainly welcome that. And I can help coordinate that kind of thing. So we're in our program work on the ground, building peace, we're very much about working with the community and what they most want and need. And so I feel like that's really reflected in how we work with folks who want to support us, and kind of what ideas do you have? What do you think it makes sense for your community and the groups you're involved in? Like, we're very happy to, I'd love to chat anytime and sort of talk about how you might want to plug in. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that helps a lot. And from your answers, I know that PSGM has taken that kind of leadership. And if PSGM decides to move forward with it, we will give them a lot of support.
Yeah. Well, Lita,
so thank you to Meg and Paul. Yeah.
One of the problems with Lita is with PSGM is people say, well, they're too political and they don't necessarily, someone won't join with us. If FMA had a forum, you would get a different crowd. So maybe we could put it on FMA to
we can talk about it, Paul and Meg. We can talk about it.
Yeah, no, we'll help out. But if we're in the front, it's usually that we will not antagonize people, but people say it's going to be too political.
They see Paul and Meg and PSGM and they say, it's too political. No, just kidding. But yeah, we have to do that.
You had some forum before, like kind of TED Talks, remember?
Yes.
So maybe.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
FMA has a program. Actually, that was initiated by Alan Maliksi, and I promised Alan that I am going to follow through on that. It's called Fred Talks.
Yeah.
It's patterned after TED Talks.
Uh-huh.
And Fred, FRED, is acronym for Filipino Renaissance in education and development. Hey, education and development, the NP project certainly fits. So
Yeah,
again, yeah, thank you for reminding me about Fred Talks.
okay, yeah, welcome.
Want to mention one thing, Mel Duncan still lives in St. Paul, so he's
Ah,
he's a local, and he's been a stalwart in getting NP going.
okay.
And he was instrumental in, getting this forum going.
Yeah, so there's more to do, as if we're not doing anything at this time. No matter how busy we are, something like this should be paid attention to. Okay.
I have
Okay.
a question of Mar about your work in Eastern Mindanao in Bukidnon. You're going to start working in the mod villages there. We've had a long interest in working in PSGM and helping raise awareness about what's happening to the Lamad in the struggle between the NPAs and the AFPs.
Yes, Paul. Yeah, we started working in the boundaries of the Eastern Mindanao context, the Eastern Mindanao area. And actually, one of our projects, we partnered an organization composed of IP groups. We call them KMMKM. So they are a women organization, women tribal groups in the area. But this was a very short engagement, and because the context of the CPP NPA peace process with the government is really different with the MILF and the government of the Philippines. So I think in this context, it's sometimes on and off in terms of the peace, the flow of the peace process between the CPP and PA. But we're really trying to get into that process, no? Slowly in terms of like the strategic way on how to be part and how to provide support to the civilians affected by that particular context and conflict in the eastern part of Mindanao. We already have our scoping, and we have already identified relevant stakeholders and civil society organizations that can be a partner and can provide support as well. There's just this difference in terms of the appreciation of the civil society organization and the acceptance of the civil society organizations in that particular context as well.
Yeah, and the problems with the paramilitaries there makes it more complex, doesn't it?
Yes, and also that with the paramilitaries.
Yeah, I think we want to keep contact on that area that's really been a long interest for us.
I said for a while there, I saw Gary King raise his hand, but I don't know.
There's a follow-up question on Lita. That's just Anna's putting up some. Anna's put some links in the chat there. People might want to check on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna.
I'm surprised that Paul Carlson hasn't had any questions. Like, you're so quiet.
I actually,
I'm
Gary
listening.
King had been raising his hand.
As Gary Kingman, I don't see any raised hands.
Earlier, I don't see it now.
So
Jovelyn has her hand raised.
Yes.
Mar, I could use a question here about the bigger picture than Nonviolent Peaceforce. You mentioned there's been some construction of a mosque, a school, a village hall, and a sports complex in Marawi City. Very important. I seem to recall the Philippine government said they were going to give 1 billion pesos for reconstruction of Marawi City, which was totally devastated. The marketplace, 4 mosques, the downtown looked like a disaster zone. Has there been more government aid that's really trying to get that society going again?
Yes, Gary, actually not only government aids, but also, I mean, government of the Philippines at the same time, governments and the different embassies are already working as well, providing support to the military. It has really caught the attention of the international in terms of the support, no, for the Marawi rehabilitation. So,
Yeah.
You're saying the
yes.
Philippine military is behind the reconstruction?
No. I mean the Marawi rehabilitation. So it's the Philippine government. They have that support, and it has got the international arena in terms of providing support to the Marawi rehabilitation. You have different. The European Union is also providing support to different organizations working on the rehabilitation. And there's different component, the infrastructure, and at the same time the evacuees as well in terms of the support.
Yeah.
So it's ongoing right now, and there is this called Task Force Bangon Marawi, or TFBM, who was created to monitor coordinate the rehabilitation of Marawi.
We've heard things like some of the money is not getting to the ground, it's being filtered away, and also that some people have complained that maybe where they were living, it's going to be converted into a port or other types of facilities, and they will not be able to get their properties back. Is that true, or is that just kind of rumors?
For those, these are the rumors, and I think we heard the same rumors as well when we visited the ground. Like those items of the evacuees are no longer to be found. They're not returned. And in terms of the support in the beginning, there were really challenges. They were really like it was difficult for them how they would approach the Marawi incident in terms of provision of support, because they do not know what is the context, what's the culture. So here in Mindanao, we have different tribes of Bangsamoro. Me, I'm a Maguindanaon. There are other Maranaos, Tausug in the island provinces, Iranon in the mainland as well, and other tribe in Basilan. So in terms of, for example, building a house, it's not like the regular house that you build in Luzon or in Visayas that is already acceptable for this for the communities. No, so there were different discussions. So even the support was sometimes delayed, did not go through. But in terms of the support and the resources, there are lots of resources coming into the Marawi rehabilitation.
Now, Jocelyn has, Jovelyn has a question. Go ahead.
Yes. So Mar, I actually grew up in Isulan, which is the capital city of Sultan Kudarat. So we're probably about, if you're in Maguindanao, we're probably about 30 to 40 minutes away. Yes. So I remember growing up experiencing this type of conflicts, like what you've mentioned, bus bombing, armed conflicts. We became desensitized to it to the extent that we just accept it as the normal. And I remember that even until I went to college in MSU IIT, and at the same time went with my law school in MSU Marawi City. So with NP's participation and many other organizations, I, for one, when I was there, I was involved with the dialogues between Christians and Muslims in collaboration with our government, provincial government, and other religious sectors. And is there an improvement in the situation? I've been out there for 16 years. And is there also a data that shows the effectiveness in the management of conflicts of the different organizations?
Yes, Ma'am Jovelyn. Actually, there were already at least many research in terms of how was in terms of the different organizations approach on conflict prevention. No, what are the gaps actually right now? But in terms of the improvement or improving the methodologies, the approach for this, let's say the dialogue, it's still ongoing actually, Ms. Jovely, no? The interfaith dialogue, Muslim, Christian, but and now even we already have the people dialogue, the Luma, the IPs as well, the indigenous people as well. So it's really going, and we have learned a lot from our experiences in the past, no? And now we are really working on looking into like a results based kind of approach, that we need to ensure that these are really there, no? Of course there are some challenges depending on what would be the perception, or what would be the what they call this one, the role of the government, the role of the Muslim and Christian. But in terms of that dialogue, we are really have that expertise, no, in conducting community dialogue, stakeholders dialogue. Now, in terms of data, I'm not really familiar, but in terms of like the impact assessment of the work of each organization, I think they have their own individual results.
Thank you.
I'll
Just
take
curious-
advantage of this of this opportunity now that Javelin has said something. Javelin, she is co-chair of Fred Talks. So maybe we can go forward, Javelin, and go on and use this topic for the next Fred Talks with Anna, if Anna will accept our request to invite her as guest speaker.
Okay.
Then
Yeah.
we go
Glenn, I
forward.
see you want to step in.
Yeah, I want to just for a moment go back to Marawi City. My first visit 25 years ago with Eleazar was, we spent a day in Marawi City. We visited Dansalan College. It was Ramadan, so we went in the morning and left before sundown, but that was an impactful day. My last visit, I should say my most recent visit, was about 4 years ago. And we went back. We didn't go into Marawi City, but we did go to Dansalan College. They've relocated probably about 5 kilometers outside of the city. They had a program going in a separate building. They've occupied that building, and they continued with classes. They continued with graduation. They continued as much of their program as they were able to after the school was destroyed, just like the whole city was. We heard stories about people, staff and students who escaped, but also those who found a place to hide on campus. And they were isolated and hidden away in the dark for days without food or water. But they survived. And the school is back. The school was up and running the following academic year without missing a beat. Of course, the program wasn't as big as it had been, but they persevered. So Dansalan College, who had been in the city, was survived. And the last I heard, they were thriving as best they could, given the loss that they faced, that they had. They kept going. They felt they had to, because that was the chance that the students had, and it was a livelihood that the professors and the staff had. They felt it was a mission as much for the livelihood of the students and staff as it was for anything else. So it was impressive what we heard. It was impressive what I saw 25 years ago. It was impressive what I saw 4 years ago. But they made it through. They made it through the siege of the city in remarkable ways. It was an incredible story.
Thank you, Glenn. I know some people they haven't asked this question, but are concerned about, a little bit concerned about the Abu Sayyaf. Is MILF fighting with the government to eliminate Abu Sayyaf? The government recently reported that they made some major gains in terms of armed struggle against the Abus. I see that the NP is working. I was surprised to hear the NP was working in areas where the Abu Sayyaf has been. Can you comment on that?
Yes, Paul. Abu Sayyaf are mainly concentrated in Basilan and Sulu, the island provinces of Mindanao. And our work in Nonviolent Peaceforce includes that geographic area as well. So we have teams, we have field sites that are in the context of the MILF, MNLF. We have areas with the BIFF, the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, and we have also areas in island provinces where we have the context of the Abu Sayyaf group. So mostly the encounters in the island provinces is between the government of the Philippines and the Abu Sayyaf group. But at the same time, you have existing Rido clan feud as well there. So I think Rido has been very prevalent in the whole Mindanao. So Abu Sayyaf is in the island provinces. Now, in terms of like government forces joining with the MILF to fight against Abu Sayyaf, I think there's not a really that clear information in terms of MILF like supporting the government of the Philippines, because it's not really the role of the MILF in terms of supporting the government of the Philippines, because the security relies on the Philippine military. Actually, now they just the MILF are in the camp of the MILF, and Paul, these are as well the Bangsamoro as well people. It could be some of the MILF are brothers. Some have brothers in MNLF, in BIFF, and sometimes in Abu Sayyaf, something like that. So but that's a good question actually in terms of how do they deal that in the island provinces. So actually in terms of the security, it's much more insecure in the island provinces. But the update right now in terms of the presence of Abu Sayyaf group is that they are quite they're like silent for now, the Abu Sayyaf group. We do not know when they are going to explode again in terms of last time I think was in the Sulu bombing, the bombing of the cathedral in Holo Sulu. Yeah, so it's really difficult, especially of their locations in the island provinces as well. But we usually have that monitoring. We always have that conflict analysis, conflict mapping, stakeholders mapping to ensure that our work will not have any security implications for the nonviolent Peaceforce.
But you mentioned that Rido, which clan violence is maybe more important in those areas than is the Abu Sayyaf?
Right now, as I mentioned, that the Abu Sayyaf are like silent right now, but there are ongoing ridos, not only in the island provinces, but also in the mainland of Mindanao. So as what Ms. Jovelyn already, as what Jovelyn shared already earlier, that she's a native in Isulan, which is very close to Maguindanao, and like bombings or like rido is just like a norm already. Okay, rido now, people evacuate today, go back to their houses again tomorrow. They leave for they evacuate again for 2 days, they come back again the following day. So it's like oh, we already know this. So it will be for 30 minutes firefight, we evacuate, tomorrow we go back.
Okay.
So
yeah. Well, I don't know. It seems like it's time to wrap up. I see one more question.
Paul,
I see
was
one more
just gonna
question.
say-
Like one more hand. Huron and Leticia have their hands up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm just wondering, by the way, thank you, Mar and Dana, for this presentation. It's a big, big issue, and there are just so many parties to the conflict. And what I was wondering is what your assessment is, either of you or both of you, as to what are your expectations if Bangsamoro actually does get representation in a formal way? How do you think it can really help deal with this multiple set of factions with local, national, and international origins of the conflict? Are there real prospects for some kind of organized effort to deal with this conflict among the different groups and not only provide peace, but also development in the area?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Leticia. I think now, because there are followers, the MILF is currently, or the chief minister right now is the chairman of the MILF as well. And they have a very huge following in terms of the Bangsamoro and the MILF. So there are sympathizers of the MILF. There are some Bangsamoro who still believes that the MILF are the right party, to lead the Bangsamoro. In 2025, there will be an election, and you need a political party, and there are already other political parties who wants to enter into this Bangsamoro government. So yes, you are right that there should be a group to consolidate to bring this conflict into like it should be less in the next couple of years, because if not, what's the point of having a Bangsamoro government if you still have these conflicts as well? No, for sure you have the MILF and GPH conflict, the government of the Philippines and the MILF, if it has completely gone down compared to 2004, compared to 2008. But the RIDO, regardless of maybe you have that government, you have that Bangsamoro government, I think the RIDO will still be there because it's mainly of the clan versus clan, not necessarily between the MILF and another armed group. But just to inform you as well, the RIDO, there are families that are linked to a base command of MILF. There's a RIDO again of another base command of MILF.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really difficult, but there is an office in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region that focuses on RIDO settlement, like covenant signing to stop that RIDO. No, so that is the goal right now, to identify those conflicts between families, for example, clan feuds, because there's an organization and there's a group, there's an agency that addresses that. Now, in terms of criminalities, I think that would be for the Philippine National Police, and there are lots of efforts by the civil society organizations, in terms of helping providing self-protection, understanding what their human rights is, and but yeah, I think there's still a plan to really, as what Leticia mentioned, to really make it into the broader picture, to ensure that once you have that government, everything else will follow, everything else will decrease. So yeah, I think that would be a separate discussion as well, Leticia, in how you would be able to mitigate, for example, other groups as well, not MILF but the other groups who are causing troubles in the peace implementation.
It seems to me that unless you have convince the younger people through education that they should be relying more on governmental and non-governmental structures to solve these problems. But also there's the problem of chronic unemployment, I know, in that area, and that really drives much of this. So unless the government steps in and helps solve some of that, I think I think it's gonna keep going.
Paul Rido is really cultural. It's really ethnicity to ethnicity.
I was wondering
Right.
if, yeah, well, I was wondering the younger people are trying to move beyond that.
Yeah, and just to add maybe to Leticia earlier, no, we have this called small arms and light weapons. No, we're developing a framework to together with the OPAPRO in terms of how you bring away the guns from the minds of the people. You know, because it's really these weapons, Leticia, why we are having this, you know, killings, conflicts, etc. Now, if you put that away from them, you know, and bring back that community, you know, environment to those people who are having guns, because you just not have to give the guns away because they can buy later. You know, if you have that program, you give away the guns, they will have that kind of, okay, we'll give the in for compliance and can buy another gun. But you bring that mindset already, you put that mindset away, and I think it's still a long process, but it's really being part of the program of the government as well, the SALW.
What do you think, Meg? Or about time to
Oh,
wrap it up?
I was just thinking with the main thing that's happening in the Philippines has been the election and that Bongbong won. And I could just kind of wondering, do you speculate, anticipate, change, whatever, some kind of him working or the government, the Bongbong government would be doing for peace in Mindanao? Some just speculation.
Yeah. So I think the Bangsamoro government would just want to have that all the agreement will be respected, no, regardless of whoever sits in the president. And we actually hope that because it's, as I said earlier, it's OPAP, or the Office of the Presidential Affairs on the Peace Process. If those people will be retained, I think we have that same lens as well together in moving forward. But if these personalities will be changed, so it will be in a way difficult as well if there will be some instructions again on how to deal with the ongoing peace implementation. We would not know until such time that the new president will sit by, I think, July 1. So for now, we haven't seen yet who are the cabinet secretaries or who are the appointed personalities under this agency, the OPAP, because for Nonviolent Peaceforce as well, it's crucial for us, no, to learn in terms of, because we have already built relationship to this current administration of the OPAP, and depending on how they will be reshuffled or they will retain, so it depends, no?
Okay, thank you.
Mar, one more thing, with Robin Padilla representing the Muslim community, would it, I'm assuming that would be very helpful positioning, right?
Yes, we believe, because most during the election, Robin Padilla was like the #1 senator in all the provinces of BARM, of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. So he's the #1 president. He's the #1 senator, top 1 senator. So there's an expectation as well that he will represent, no, the minority, the Bangsamoro in the Philippine senators, because most are like non-Moro in the senatorial place.
Okay. Yeah, Paul. Any more questions here, or we'll wrap up?
I don't see any hands raised. I don't.
Okay.
know.
So well, Mar, thank you so much for an excellent presentation and sharing your work. Seems like hard work. And thank you for, I forgot, Jolie, are you still there? If I forgot to acknowledge you. Jolie, you, okay. Well, Anna, you have some, want to have some closing words from you?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say thank you again for having us. Mar and I are so grateful, and it really does take all of us together to make this work possible. So do know, I put in the chat, if you're interested in connecting and how to get more involved, I'm always happy to connect. Like I said, I'm here in Minnesota with you all, with many of you. So happy to chat. Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
And
Anna.
I want to say how much I'm impressed with all the things you're doing. I don't know how, with your small group, how you can keep active in all those different areas.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
you,
for
everyone.
coming.
Thank you.
Mar,
Thanks for
thank
having
you,
me.
Mar,
Thank you.
Thank you.
for giving us your time.
Hey, Anna, say hi to
Problem.
David and your kids.